It's been a lot of questions, so it's a little tricky to know which ones to cover in rebuttal. The LNC side has relied on procedural correctness. We followed this provision of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, or they've also pitched the idea that because this is already done, somehow it's all mooted out and it's all water under the bridge. At one point, Mr. Jacobs said, I think that the bylaws are actually violated by the pre-investigation suspension in the policy manual, kind of confessing the fact that everything's wacky here, but then backs away from it and says, well, I hope no future LNC would be that foolish as to do something. The response of the LNC, especially Ms. McArdle, has confirmed that there was no vote anywhere. There was no vote to create a reconciliation committee. She did it by herself as an ad hoc committee by fiat. She made the decisions about what the committee was going to do without there being any vote on the committee. She made the decisions all along without there being anything to review, and alleges that somehow because nobody tried to stop her, nobody voted to rescind this ad hoc committee that was just a group of people that she picked, that somehow that's approval. That means the LNC supported her authority to say, just hold on and slow roll this paperwork that has already been signed. Don't send it to the Secretary of State. This idea that staff is responsible for submitting the nomination papers is false. It's just not true. It is a secretarial duty. It was a secretarial duty in 2012 when Alicia Matson did it. It was a secretarial duty in 2016. It was a secretarial duty in 2020. The fact that this LNC doesn't have the institutional knowledge to know that it's the secretary that does it or directs staff to do it is unfortunate, but this idea that staff has to do it and we didn't know what we were doing is an entirely self-inflicted wound. The secretary has an obligation to do the job that is required by the bylaws. That's what we come back around to here. The bylaws require the secretary to submit the nomination paperwork to provide full support to the candidate. And these characterizations from the other side, they would like to say that this isn't a problem. It's all water under the bridge. It's all behind us now. No one should worry about it. Everything worked out. But it didn't work out. Tennessee specifically didn't make the ballot in spite of it being a very low signature threshold because of this delay, because of all the time taken, because of the coddling of state affiliates doing things that violated the bylaws by a chair who thought that it was a good idea for the strategy that she chose herself to pursue on her own bump. It's just nonsense on stilts. And what this really comes down to is, do you believe that the bylaws matter, or can any LNC chair, any group of a majority of the LNC decide that the purpose of the party is something different from what it says in black and white? And if you allow that to happen at that point, we become a lawless organization.
That's right.
We no longer follow our own rules. And that would be unfortunate for the Libertarian Party to do that. We have always prided ourselves on following our own internal rules. And so I would ask you to cut through some of the obfuscation here. Look at the facts. There was a request by the national chair to delay putting the candidate nominated by the National Convention on the ballot in various states to the detriment of the campaign. And the secretary did her job in spite of being told to delay doing her job. She did the job she knew how to do from having previously done the job in another cycle. She knows what she's doing.
Mr. Sarwark, we are up at time. We're up at time.
Thank you.
And Ms. McArdle, 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. The phrase "as soon as possible and without delay" is not in the bylaws. The phrase is made up. There is no way to correlate sending in paperwork a few weeks later with a poor showing in the general election. That is completely unsubstantiated. When we say delay, we are not talking about a delay in getting ballots out to voters for the general election. We are talking about a chunk of time within a 3-month timeline to get paperwork into an administrative office. There were 2 months left. Hypothetical situations about what would happen if Kennedy had made it onto the ballot in Colorado are not real situations, and they should not be part of the deliberations of this body. I convinced the LPCO, along with many other states, and thankfully, with the help of the Reconciliation Committee, not to put R.F.K. Jr. on the ballot after they passed their motion. There was a delay in getting the candidates' nomination papers into Arizona and Ohio as well, but that was due to the campaign. There was no push to keep Chase off the ballot by the LNC. When Ms. Yanuskavich alerted me to Caryn Ann Harlos' actions, I could have called LPCO to tip them off, but I did not. A person skilled in diplomacy can persuade someone who dislikes the POTUS to cooperate and put them on. I did it with the help of Pat Ford, Kathy Yanuskavich, and Andrew Watkins. The LNC did have an official policy. We had a reconciliation committee, and we were working with multiple state affiliates, including LPCO. We did take a calculus, and we did it with good reason. Disaffiliation in New Mexico was an expensive debacle in my first term. It cost us $55,000 to seek ballot access, which we did not retain. It was a tremendous amount of work to reconstitute our affiliate, and we did not want to repeat that in Colorado, knowing that they were ready to fight in the legal arena and they had legal counsel backing them up already. Mr. Redpath went to petition in Tennessee, and he said it was the hardest petitioning work he had ever done. It was harder than DC. That had nothing to do with nomination paperwork or not receiving full support, since our treasurer was there on the ground. Filing paperwork was not the secretary's job. That's untrue. It was staff's job. The chair directs the executive director and staff. The secretary is not the person who submit the forms. It is not in the bylaws. She is not the person who mailed in 50 certificates of nomination in 2020. I read the paragraph-long description of the secretary's job. It doesn't include submitting paperwork, and I worked with her to scramble and try to figure out what to do this election cycle because she had no idea, because Robert Kraus had always done it for her. We both signed certificates of nomination. However, I signed all 50 of them twice, and potential litigation certainly falls under the litigation exception. There were cease and desist letters sent. Our bylaws say pending or potential litigation. It is right there in the bylaws when it comes to executive session exceptions. Thank you so much.